Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yes.
you.
Okay, thank you. So let me just share my screen. All right. Good evening, everyone, once again. Today, we're going to be talking about time management, and we're going to be discussing how to effectively manage your time. What are the things that causes you to waste time, and what does the Bible have to say about time management as well? So, what is time management? So time management is basically learning how to allocate time between all of the tasks that you have to do and different activities, and doing it in an effective and efficient manner in order to achieve all the goals that you have for yourself. And when you have perfected the art of effectively managing your time or good time management, then you're able to work smarter and not harder. And you can also get things done in less time and with less pressure on yourself, to reduce anxiety and stress and burnout. So time is universal. It's applicable everywhere. We all have the same 24 hours, even though different countries have different time zones. At the end of the day, it's still 24 hours that we have. It is valuable because it's not something that you should toy with. Once time has come and it's gone, then it's gone forever. Nobody has been able to hack time travel or going back in time. So once a day is gone, then that day is gone. There's nothing you can do about it, which is why it's irretrievable. So before we move on to what the Bible says about time management, I want us to do a quick exercise. If you're at home, you can just do it, or if you're driving, you can just listen, and then I'll share the implications of that exercise with all of us. So I want us to, in our various homes or wherever we are, stand if you can, and then count up to a minute, which is 60 seconds. I'm going to use my phone to do a timer for a minute. So once is 60 seconds, once is a minute, you can sit down, and then I would explain the importance of this exercise. So I'm going to start my timer. Okay, so I'm starting my timer right now. So you can start counting 60 seconds, and then I'll let you know once it's 1 minute on your end. Okay, so that's 1 minute up. So I want to ask, how many of us sat down before I said it was 1 minute? You can just indicate by raising up your hand. Okay. Okay. Did anybody participate in the exercise at all? So if you participated in the exercise, you can just indicate by raising up your hand if you sat down before I said it was 1 minute. Okay. Nobody. Okay. Was anybody still standing when I said it was 1 minute? Okay. Thanks, Ebenezer and Emmanuel. I guess it's just two of you that's participated. Okay, essentially I wish more people participated, but the essence of the exercise is for you to know how you view time in your mind. So if you had sat down before it was 1 minute, what that means is that you underestimate time. So for you, time is very short. Like everything has to be done in a hurry, everything is urgent, and everything is just very fast-paced. For instance, when I did this exercise, I realized that I underestimate time. So for something that should take me 3 hours, in my mind, I need to be done within an hour or an hour, 30 minutes. So I'm putting myself under more pressure. I'm rushing through things, sort of like going a little bit slower and paying more attention to detail because time is moving very fast in my mind, and I'm not going according to how time is actually counting. So if you're the kind of person that you can do it in your spare time, do this exercise so you can realize how you estimate time or you view time in your mind, and then you'll be able to then apply these things to yourself. Then if you were still standing when I said it was 1 minute, what that means is that you tend to overestimate time. So you allocate more time to things that should be done in a shorter time period. So for instance, if you were supposed to complete something within 2 hours, in your mind, you think that you have 3 hours or 4 hours to complete that same task. And both underestimating and overestimating time, there are two extremes. What we're trying to do, or what would be an effective way of managing your time is to strike a balance between those two. Obviously, nobody can be as accurate to say like every single time when you plan to do something within an hour or 2 hours. It's not every time that you're able to say, oh, I'm able to complete it within that stated time. Is not every time that's possible. But if you're able to try and strike a balance between those two extremes, what you would find is that maybe you estimate that you need 3 hours to complete something. Even if you go over that 3 hours or you go below the 3 hours, maybe it's like a difference of like 20 minutes, but nothing excessive like an hour or more in terms of striking a balance. So I just thought that would be a fun exercise to do. You can do it in your spare time because I understand that some people might still be driving home and all of that. So you can just do that to know exactly how you view time in your mind. Okay, so I'll just move on to the next slide. So what does the Bible say about time management? Ephesians 5:15-17 says, so then be careful how you live. Do not be unwise, but wise, making the best use of your time because the times are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. Psalm 90:12 says, teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. James 4:13-14 says, now listen, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a town, stay there a year, conduct business and make money. You do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. So all of these Bible texts just talk about the fact that the Bible also recognizes the character time and how important it is, and how fleeting it is, because in a twinkling of an eye, you would have started the day and then it's in the evening and you've not been able to achieve anything. And what we understand as Christians is that we are stewards of our time. And when at the end of the day, when Christ comes, we're going to have to account for every single second we spent on this earth. How much of that time are we using to preach the gospel? How much of that time are we using to better ourselves? How much of that time are we using to do frivolous activities and engage in time wasting activities? So we need to remember that if time management and making good use of our time is not just a useful skill in the corporate world, it's also one of the things that the Bible requires of us, for us not to waste our time, for us to plan to do things. Like Luke 14 verse 28 talks about the fact that if you want to build a tower, you want to build a house, you would first sit down and calculate what this construction is going to cost. You wouldn't just go and start building without checking what the market rates for certain things are. Especially now, like when prices change every day, like you can go to a supermarket, you can go to a store today, and then the price that is there when you go there the next day, it's gone up. So if you're building during this time, you obviously have to be very, very watchful of what things are in the market. You have to definitely arrive at a cost and even put like estimate an overhead or a fluctuation line that you may exceed, just so you can cover any inflation or any changes in prices. So the Bible is just emphasizing to us that time management is very important, and we all have to account for the time that is spent on this earth. So what does effective time management involve? So in terms of managing your time efficiently and effectively, it's important that you set goals for yourself. So you need to be able to say, okay, what are my short-term and what are my long-term goals? An example of a short-term goal would be, for instance, let's say the promotion cycle in your place of work is every July. So you're planning, your short-term goal is that this July, I want to be promoted. When the promotion cycle comes, then I'm part of the employees that are promoted to the next level. A long-term goal would probably be maybe in 5 years, I want to have finished my master's, I want to own 3 houses, I want to be married, I want to have children. So those are long-term goals. And setting goals helps you to effectively allocate the time required for each of those goals. So if you know that for your promotion goal, it's not January of this year that you start working towards a promotion goal. You'll start working towards from the previous promotion cycle, because your appraisal would be on the previous year and not this year. So you would have already started working on yourself from the year before, so that this coming cycle, promotion cycle, then you'll be promoted. And your long-term goals, you start doing all of the things that you need to do. If you're doing a master's, then you need to apply for that master's, look for funding, just effectively put things in place in the appropriate time so that you can achieve those goals. It also helps you to have clarity on what you're trying to do. Because if you have a goal, you know what you're working towards, and you know that you know all of the things that you need to do to then complete and achieve those goals. Another way to effectively manage time is to prioritize your tasks. So you need to be able to define what is important and what you should do first. So if you have a couple of things to do, then you need to be able to say, okay, this 1, 2, 3, very important, has to be done on time. And then 4, 5, and 6 are not as important. They need to be done, but they're not as important. So you're able to then focus on the ones that are like top priority, more urgent, and then you do the other ones later. So you're able to just do the things that are more important right now, because maybe there's an impending deadline for those other things. And then instead of you then doing something that is not due for like the next 2 weeks, and then you leave the one that is due today. So that's what prioritizing helps you to do. You're able to then say, okay, let me do the one that's due today, and then do the one that is due in 2 weeks later on. Creating a schedule is also very important. You're able to then be able to say time slots for different things. So if you want to, I think it's more effective when you're reading. It's easier to create a schedule when you're reading. In terms of like every day, I don't know that many people that are able to say like plan their days to a T. I think some people do. Maybe some people are able to say 7 to 8, I'm going to work. By 8 to 9, I should be at work and all of that. But obviously, you need to also make rooms for things that are not within your control. Like, for instance, in Lagos, saying to yourself, oh, when I wake up today, I'm going to get to the office in an hour, is usually a joke, because anything can happen in terms of like traffic and all of that. But it's very helpful to have a schedule, and then you have time slots for each thing, and you're able to complete each thing within that time slot as much as possible. Another way is to minimize distraction. So you need to eliminate things that you know can affect you being focused and finishing what you said you want to complete. So if you have problems with social media, like you get distracted once you have social media, or you can't work when the TV is on, so you remove all of those distractions, all of those things that are affecting you, so that you can then say, okay, I have 2 hours, let me use these 2 hours to do what I want to do, and then don't allow any other thing to distract and like elongate that time period that you've already set for yourself. Another thing is using tools and techniques. So calendars, planners, to-do list. I'm a big fan of to-do list. I always start my day writing down all of the things I want to do, and then I tick it off when I complete it, because it gives me like a sense of accomplishment that I've been able to achieve certain things today. Most of the time I don't finish what is on my to-do list, but at least I can see that maybe out of 10 things, I was able to do 5. And usually when you start the day with like your to-do list, most of the time you can start with 10, and then by the end of the day you have like 15 things, because things keep coming up as your day goes. So it's just helpful to be able to just know what it is that you want to do, and then when you take it off, you feel like you've accomplished a lot. Planners are also very helpful. I also use like the notes app on my phone also is very helpful for like taking notes and just knowing, and just allocating things, because you can have like different notes on different things. So that's also helpful. I also use the reminder app a lot to prompt me to remember to do certain things. Like maybe I called like a supervisor, and the supervisor says, call me back in 30 minutes. So I just put a reminder. I set up an alarm, because it comes in as an alarm. So I'm able to be reminded of certain things. Also, different techniques such as the 4-quadrant concept or time blocking to optimize time. We're going to discuss the 4-quadrant concept and also other principles in the coming slides. Being flexible is also very important, because you need to be able to adapt to changes. Like I said, for instance, I start off my day with a to-do list of 10 things. If someone comes and says, oh, we need something that has to be done urgently, like for instance, today I already had my to-do list of like 8 things to do, and then I got an email like around 10 a.m. saying that a new response had to go out before 2 p.m. That was not my to-do list. I didn't plan for it, but then I was able to adjust and then prioritize that, because every other thing is due by like COB or end of the day. But the email that came in at 10 was due before 2, and I knew it was going to take me some time to complete. So I was able to prioritize that and leave every other thing until I was able to finish that, because that had a more impending deadline than every other thing on my list. So you have to be flexible. Because you have a to-do list does not mean that to-do list is set in stone. If something comes up that is more important or more urgent than the things on your to-do list, then you need to push that thing forward and focus on doing it, and then go back to the rest of the things on your list. Taking breaks is very, very important, because you need to be able to prevent burnout and also maintain energy levels. So for instance, you've been working from 9 till 5 p.m., you go through Lagos traffic, you're home by like 6:30, 7. So start working immediately is not advisable, because you just take like an hour or 2 hours a break, so that you can just recharge, refresh, and then continue working. Because what you find is that once you don't take a break and you just start working immediately, then it takes you more time to complete what you're trying to do, and you're therefore wasting time. So if you are just taking 2 hours break, maybe the thing that you decided to do immediately after you came home took you like 2 hours, but then if you're taking a break, maybe you'd have finished it in like an hour or 30 minutes or 40 minutes. So it's very important to take breaks so that you can recharge and just be less stressed and avoid burnout as well. So there are things that prevent effective time management, and these things are called time wasters. I mentioned some of them already, but like excessive social media use surprise visitors. Maybe like, for instance, you're in the office, you say you want to complete something within an hour, then somebody comes by your desk and then the person starts gisting, and then look at your time, an hour has gone by and you've not been able to do what you want to do. So meetings as well can be time wasters, because there's certain meetings or calls that you have that there are things that could clearly have been done via email. They just send an email and get it over with, instead of having a meeting and then we're arguing and going back and forth on something that if you had sent via email, it would have been resolved faster. Because when you're required to put something in writing, you have to think about it, because then it needs to be very clear to the person reading it and to you as well. So when you're forced to put things in writing, then you're able to then think about it more, rather than when you're on a call and you're just talking and then you just keep saying everything that comes up in your mind, whether it makes sense or not, and then you have like long hours spent in a meeting that did not get anywhere. Another example is crisis. So when things come up unexpectedly, like I mentioned before, maybe you're on your way to work, then you have an accident, or there's like a breakdown, and then there's just traffic everywhere. So all of those things are things that you can't plan or control, is what we refer to as crisis. Doing it all is also another way of wasting your time. So if, for instance, you have a supervisory capacity, you should be able to delegate some of the things to younger employees or your subordinates to assist you with. And then even if you're like the youngest level of associates, there's a way to delegate. There are different technology tools that you can use to make things easier for you and just reduce time spent on certain things, instead of just trying to do it all yourself and do it from scratch. Procrastinating is a very big time waster. You have things to do and you keep pushing it, and then you're now rushing to the last minute. So procrastinating is a time waster, and it's a very common time waster for most people. I procrastinate too. By God's grace, God will help each and every one of us that are still procrastinating, in Jesus' name. Poor planning is also a time waster. When you don't plan for things, you don't put things in motion. In order to achieve something, you need to plan for something. If you're getting married, you have to plan for that wedding. You can't just say, I'm getting married today, and go and get married. I mean, some people might, but if you plan for something, then it's just more efficient overall, because then maybe you'd have spent more if you just went ahead to do it the way you did it without planning, but then you get to spend less, or it's just more organized when you plan for things. Also, personal disorganization, like in terms of the way people arrange themselves and also the way they work. So for instance, if you're working from home and then your house is like dirty and disorganized, you might not feel motivated to do anything. Personally, like if my house is scattered or not organized, I'm not able to focus on what I need to do. I'll just be thinking about, oh my God, like everywhere is just messy. So I'd have to focus on doing that, and then I've also wasted my time instead of working. So individually, you can all rank like how much time you spend on each of these time wasters, so that you know exactly what the problem is in terms of wasting the things that you focus on that lead to you wasting time. And then you're able to then start working on those things, on how you can avoid doing those things so that you don't waste your time. Okay, so we're going on to the 4-quadrant concept. So it's a concept that was developed by Stephen Covey, and essentially it's 4 quadrants: 1, 2, 3, 4. And the first quadrant is things that are urgent and important. Second quadrant is things that are not urgent but important. The third quadrant is things that are urgent and not important. And the fourth quadrant is things that are not urgent and not important. So in terms of each quadrant 1 is things that are urgent, important, like things that have to be done now, impending deadline. Deadline is today. like that example I gave of receiving an email at 10 a.m. and saying they want a response by 2 p.m. That's urgent and important is today. The other things on my to-do list fall within quadrant 2. They're not urgent, but they're important. So the deadlines for COB, 4 p.m., 5 p.m., still important, but not as urgent as the first one that falls within quadrant 1. Urgent and not important are maybe someone calls you, phone calls, you get like there's some emails that will just come up and you just need to respond to them. They're not important, but then the client has placed a level of urgency saying, oh, they need your response now. Or maybe admin work, like you need to issue an invoice now because the deadline is today. So you need to issue that invoice. It's urgent, but not necessarily as important as every other thing that you have to do on your to-do list. So things that are not urgent and not important are time wasters. All of the time wasters are not urgent and not important. That's what falls within quadrant 4. Now, the best quadrant to be in is quadrant 2. What that means is that you have important things to do, but none of it is urgent. What that means is that you are able to complete things within time, but then you're not under immense pressure to do those things. Because if you're constantly in quadrant 1, you're going to be stressed and you're going to burn out. So quadrant 2 is the best quadrant to be in when you have important things, but not everything is urgent. They're not as urgent. And even if you find yourself between quadrant 1 and 2, most of the things that you have to do should be in quadrant 2. Because what happens is that if you're constantly in quadrant 1, it can't be that every single task that someone gives to you is very urgent. It also means that for some of the tasks that are falling within quadrant 1, you had procrastinated up until the point when they became very urgent and also important. So you had something to do that was due in 2 weeks. You ignore that thing until a day before the deadline. You obviously can't go and seek for an extension because you had 2 weeks to complete it. And even if you wanted to ask for an extension, they shall ask for an extension at the beginning of the week, not on Thursday when the deadline is on Friday. So now you are stuck in quadrant 1 doing something that you should have, that you ordinarily had 2 weeks to complete and you'd have been able to do with like less stress and less urgency. So we should all aim to constantly be in quadrant 2. Quadrant 3, no, because what that means is that you're doing a lot of things that are not important, but they're suddenly so urgent, like everybody wants it now. But in actual fact, it's not important because, especially if you're dealing with clients or customers, they always place urgency on something that is not urgent. So a client comes and says, I want a response today. And then you give them that response today, but then they don't come back to you for like months. And then they not come back after a month and say, oh, well, this is your response. We need to clarify this, and this. So clearly it was not urgent, but they made it urgent. And then you then had to prioritize it over other things that should have been done when they were actually not urgent and could have been done at a different time. Quadrant 4 should be avoided most times because you don't want to constantly be doing things that are not urgent and things that are not important, because what that ends up portraying you to be is lazy and not having things to do. So that's the 4 quadrant concept. Is an effective technique for managing your time effectively and efficiently. So other techniques is least effort principle. If there's something that you can do in a shorter time, then you should strive to do it within that short time. Sorry, give me a second. So I'm just going to put off my video because there's no longer light. So the least effort principle, if there's something that you can do in different ways, then you need to use the one that requires less energy to do so that I can do it quickly, do it faster, and then you spend less time doing it. Actually, that's other method would still give you either the same or higher quality of results. For if you look at the picture on the bottom right, you can see that two men are dragging a cart full of heavy rocks. Somebody's offering them tires because that would obviously be faster, but they are saying no, that they are too busy. A lot of times we do this and then we focus on, oh, we're trying to get things done. But there's like a faster way of doing things, and we should learn how to apply this principle. Conversely, also, as Christians, we also tend to do this in terms of placing burden on ourselves, or placing it on God and giving everything to God. So this principle can apply both ways. Another principle is addition through subtraction. So if you eliminate distractions, things that are not essential, like using social media while at work, because social media is addictive. So if you start scrolling, you can end up spending an hour scrolling and you have so many things to do. So if you're able to remove all of the things that distract you or things that are not important, then you're able to then add more value to the things that you need to do, and then focus on those things and do those things within like a reasonable time period. Delegating is also a very important technique. If there are things that can be done by somebody else, either as efficiently as you would do it, or even if you need to guide the person to do it as well as you would do it, then it's better to delegate. At a certain level, there are some things that you wouldn't be able to do. If you're like the CEO of a company, you can't be the one issuing invoices or setting up calls for a meeting. You have to have somebody that would be responsible for doing that. So delegation is very important. And if you're not in a supervisory capacity as at the time, then you need to be able to automate whatever process as much as possible. There's so many tools for making things easier through technology. And once you're able to automate most of your processes, then you have time to focus on things that can be done through automation. The things that can be automated, you automate them. And the things that cannot be automated, then you now have enough time to focus on those things. So that's just that's a presentation on time management. Effective time management is achievable. It's not something that cannot be done. We just have to strike a balance in everything that we do, apply some of these techniques that I've described today, and find what works for you. If you work better with a planner or having a to-do list like me, then that's what you should be. You should have a to-do list. If you work better, not having a to-do list, but just going with the flow, and you find that you're still able to effectively manage your time well with that method, then you do that. There's no one size fits all for time management. There are general principles that can be applied, but everybody applies all of these principles in different ways, in the way that will fit them. Above all, we need to also seek wisdom from God to effectively manage our time. This is not something that we should think, oh, we can't ask God about effectively managing time. God is interested in everything that we do. And as we saw in the Bible verses on time management, the Bible also talks about it. And if you are struggling with managing your time and you try and use principles, techniques, and it's not working, or even if you don't know how to go about it, you can always ask God for wisdom, for guidance to help you manage your time. And you will be able to do so because God hears and answers all our prayers, no matter how small or little we think it is, because nothing is small or too big for our God. So I pray that God will help all of us to manage our time better, more efficiently and more effectively, and we don't waste time doing things that are not benefiting to us. In Jesus' name. Amen. I don't know if anybody has questions for the presentation. Okay. I don't think there are any presentation. Sorry. I don't think there are any. Oh, someone's hands up. Sorry. You can go ahead, Elder, right?
Well, I'd like to, good evening, everyone. I'd like to just say well done. I know for your presentation and the way you captured Stephen Covey's quadrants on time management. The question is this: you did quadrant 1, and of course 2, which is more strategic. How would you handle the pressure of pushing you into quadrant 1? Urgent and important, because most people actually find themselves in quadrant 1, not because of their own inadequacies, but because of the demands on their time, or demands on them rather. And I know what you've done this evening is, like you said, give us the principles to be able to not be overtaken by demands of us. So how do you ensure that your boss, your supervisor, do not keep pushing you into urgent and important and make it difficult for you to plan for important but not urgent assignments? How can you, what strategies can you use to ensure you keep focused and more strategic and not reactive? Quadrant 1. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir, for that question. So I find that what works for me to prevent always being in quadrant 1 is always asking for extensions as much as possible. So obviously, there are certain things that will come that you can't move from quadrant 1 to quadrant 2. But as much as possible, when a task comes from maybe my supervisor, and then it's like a self-imposed deadline. Let's say the client says they want our response by Friday, and then my supervisor is saying, "Oh, I want response." Today is Tuesday. The supervisor is saying they want the response by Wednesday. I would usually ask, is it possible for me to give you a response like first thing Thursday morning, since the client wants it on Friday, so that I'm not under pressure to get something to you on Wednesday, and then you might not even end up reviewing that thing on Wednesday until Thursday or Thursday evening, then when it goes to the client on Friday. So as much as possible, ask for extensions where you think it can be given. And even if you can ask, and if they say, okay, that's not possible, then you're able to then say, maybe you have 5 things to do, and then suddenly 2 become quadrant 1, then you're able to, maybe for the rest of the other tasks, speak to your supervisor and say, which one of this should I prioritize, so that I'm not under pressure to do 2 things at the same time when I can just do one. Because what I found works, even for clients, like maybe they send you 4 documents at once, you can go back and say, okay, see, to review 4 documents, we'll need a week or 2 weeks to review these 4 documents. Which of the 4 documents should we prioritize getting to you this week? And clients will usually be happy to say, okay, this one's actually more important. I just sent 4 of them, but actually 1 or 2 is more important. So pushing back is key in terms of preventing yourself from being in quadrant 1, especially when you are a subordinate and you have supervisors, or you're dealing with customers and clients who for everything for them is important and urgent, because clients or customers, they feel like that the only customers or clients that you have. They don't want to hear that you have other people, and they don't care. Even if they know that you do, they don't care. They want their task completed at a certain time. So the best way to avoid being in quadrant one all the time is to push back as much as possible. Ask for extensions, ask for what should be prioritized. Even dealing with clients, ask them, which one should come first? Because you've given me two things. I can't possibly do two things at the same time. And what I found that people usually concede and say, okay, yes, you can do this, but you can do this other one maybe in 3 days' time. And that's what has worked for me. Other people can also share what works for them in practical terms. Sister Lola, your hand is up. I think you can go ahead.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much, Anu. Very nice presentation. I loved the images that you put in the slides. It helped you pass the message across. Yeah, so my what works for me rather in response to Uncle Shei's comment is, like you said, pushing back and then of course seeking for extension. And then I also realized that when you're also trustworthy in terms of keeping to your promises, people tend to concede because most times you have people giving very tight timelines because they're also allowing a buffer just in case the person that is meant to deliver to them doesn't come forth on time. So as individuals, we should also try and ensure that we keep to our words. If I promise that I'll deliver something on Thursday night, then I need to ensure that I keep to my promise of Thursday night. And if for any reason I'm not able to meet up with Thursday night, then I need to let the person know upfront why I can't meet up with Thursday night, the challenges I'm facing, and in what ways I need help. I guess that would also help in terms of pushing back and helping people appreciate the need for more extension. Yeah, that would be my comments. There's also something I want to share, which is also really around time management. There was this article I saw on Harvard Business Review lately, which someone also mentioned during a session that we had. It speaks to managing our energy much more than our time. Now, the concept is we focus on managing our energy, we're able to achieve more, both as individuals and as corporate organizations, and I would explain. So I wake up in the morning and I have 10 things to do. Of course, it's 24 hours in a day. So I'm asking myself, what's urgent and important, like you have explained in terms of the quadrants, and then what requires the most of my energy. So we are advised to start with those things that require the most of our energy in the morning and leave those things that do not require as much of our energy for later in the day, or even delegate them and then follow through later. So if, for example, as a student, I know I have to clean my room, like you have said. On a Sunday morning, I should be able to say, okay, I'm not going to clean my room first thing on Sunday because it doesn't require much energy from me. It doesn't require much brain work from me. I would rather do that later in the day or even at night when I have less energy left. So I spend the early hours of the day focusing on those things that would require serious energy, that way I'm able to achieve more. I'm also able to manage my energy level. Yeah, so that's one point I would like us to pay attention to. You can also read up the article. It's online, Harvard Business Review. Like I said, it speaks to managing our energy and not our time. I've also learned that asking for help works a lot. So rather than spending my time struggling with something that someone else may even be able to do better than I am able to do because he or she has done extensive research, has found hacks of getting it done shorter, then I'd rather ask around for someone who has that information or has better skills than me, rather than being too proud or arrogant to ask for help. And then I focus on getting it done all by myself. Then I get burnt out and I'm unable to focus on strategic things. Yeah, so these are my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing. Sister Ruth, you can go ahead.
Okay, well done, Sister No. Good job. And just to toe the line of Sister Lola about energy, but I probably put it in different perspective is you starting with self-awareness and knowing where you have capacity in. There are some jobs that are absolute waste of your time, no matter how well you do it. They just need to be outsourced. If you're very busy and what you use your brain for will earn you more money, there's absolutely no point wasting an entire day doing a very laborious work that at the end of the day looks like you've not put your time to good use. So it's very, very important. And this is particularly emphasized as you get to some strategic roles. You just realize, like, you can't be updating Excel or putting when there are people who literally probably will be more proficient in using the Excel and getting the quick figures out. Then you move on to other things that require your brain at that level. The second one also is more like, I think it's important that we understand ourselves. I don't want to use the word self-mastery, but self-awareness is key. So also in line with what Sister Lola said, but let me also rephrase it slightly different. In terms of that energy, some people are better morning people. So if you're going to do certain tasks that probably require you thinking fast, thinking on your toes, you might put those tasks ahead of time. You can put them in early hours. There are people that just can't function well by evening. Their energy level would have dropped. There's no point you forcing your brain to do those tasks at those points where you're not usually not your optimal best, because you'll not be putting you just not bring out the best out of yourself. So a lot of time, it's always good that we pay attention to ourselves and not always look at might wake up might just finish work. Some people finish work by 6 p.m. and they start doing other strategic work. Then B can't function like that. B gets to the office by 6 a.m. because of traffic, and is able to churn out very good quality work between 6 to probably 7:30 when proper work resumes. So it's always important that we authentically live our truth and pay attention to what works according to how our system functions. That helps us to also manage time so that we don't just waste time running around and not achieving much.
Thank you very much, Sister Ruth, for sharing that. Sister Lola, I think your hands are still raised.
Yes, I thought to share something else. This was a hack I got from my dad growing up. I'm sure we're all aware of this song. Give every flying minute something. Walk for the night is coming. Blah, 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 blah. And then it ends with, give every flying minute something to keep in stock. Walk for the night is coming when man's walk no more. So his own point is always learn to invest your time. So you have 24 hours in a day. Those 24 hours should not always be for the present. How much of it are you investing into your future? So if I start off now as a student, I know I need to pass my exams in order to move on to the next level. How much of my time now am I investing into my future? If I'm working now, I know, okay, in the nearest future, I want to be an MBA holder. How much of my time now am I investing into becoming an MBA holder in the nearest future? So it's really about ensuring that we're able to allocate our time effectively in order to ensure that we are able to invest in the future. And it comes in various forms. So I close work at 5 and I get home. Then I spend the whole of the evening gisting with my friends rather than looking out for some course or a program, or even it could even be a business that I'm trying to develop. So I could spend 3 hours of my time every day focusing on that objective. And the truth is, whatever is done consistently over a period of time, it's either one becomes a master of it or it yields real results. So it's a challenge for us, even to me, that is speaking, to say, okay, as much as possible every day, I should ensure that a portion of my time is consciously being invested for the purpose of my future development or my future benefits. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Sister Lola, for that contribution. So we've learned additional things about managing your energy and also investing your time. Thank everybody for all their contributions and for the questions. And I'll hand over to Sister Bola to handle the testimonies and prayer requests.